Japan. Where is it? Japan is an archipelago, a string of islands that stretches more than 2,400 kilometers just off the east coast of Asia and the Pacific Ocean. Japan is smaller than the state of California and includes 4 main islands, along with thousands of smaller islands. The country's closest neighbors are China, North and South Korea, and the Siberian region of Russia. The Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea, lies between Japan and Asia. The East China lies in the southwest of Japan, and the Pacific Ocean lies to the east. The largest island in the chain is Honshu, which includes more than 80% of Japan's population. The other primary islands are Hokkaido, Shikoku, and Kyushu. The country's largest cities are Honshu, with nearly all of them located along the east coast. The capital of Japan is Tokyo, also located in Honshu. More than 32 million people live and work in the sprawling metropolis. The city, a bustling center for international trade and business, is one of the most populated cities in the world. Millions of people also live in areas surrounding Tokyo, forming one may call Greater Tokyo. People typically travel from these surrounding areas into Tokyo and on high-speed trains called bullet trains, as well as on slow trains and subways. The city is the main transportation hub for Japan. It is said that more people pass through the Shizuoka railway station in Tokyo than any other railway station in the world. People. Although Japan is a small country, it has a population of more than 127 million, with over 90% of its people living in urban areas. Many people who live in cities work in banks, restaurants, hospitals, and other service industries. Others work in factories producing high-tech electronics such as cell phones, computers, and televisions, as well as other products. As motor vehicles and machines, Japan is one of the leading producers of electronics in the world. In cities along the coast, some people work in Japan's massive fishing industry, which includes one of the largest fleets of fishing ships in the world. Because Japan's cities are so crowded, many people live in tall apartment buildings. In the suburbs surrounding cities, people typically live in houses and smaller apartment buildings when space allows. Meticulously groomed Japanese gardens appear beside some homes. In some Japanese houses, the floor are covered with thick rice straw mats called tatami. It is customary for Japanese people to remove their shoes when entering a home. Some Japanese sleep on thin beds called futons that are rolled out on the floor. The rooms in some Japanese homes are divided into thin paper or bamboo screens instead of walls. Japanese people observe many different rules for manners, such as for greeting people and serving guests. For example, instead of shaking hands when greeting each other, they bow. How many times they bow and how deeply they bow depends on the person's social status. Japan's main language is Japanese, the writing of which is very complex. It uses two scripts known as hiragana and katakana, which each contain about 50 symbols and represent different sounds. Japanese also use kanji, which are borrowed Japanese characters. They even the Latin alphabet we use in English. Land. Japan is a rugged country covered with lofty mountains and surrounded by water. In fact, most of Japan is mountainous, which is why nearly all land on some islands is so steep and treacherous that people cannot lift them. The highest peak is Mount Fuji, a volcano on the southern coast of Honshu. Japan is located in one of the most geologically unstable areas in the world, with more than 70 active volcanoes and 1,000 earthquakes annually. An earthquake that occurs along the ocean floor can create a giant wave called tsunami, which means harbor wave in Japanese. Fast-flowing rivers cascade from the mountains of Japan and into the flat areas. These rivers help provide water to make many rice farms throughout the coastal lands. Lakes can be found both near the ocean and in volcanic craters called calderas. They have gradually filled with rainwater. Monsoons influence Japan's climate by causing high winds that can be wet and stormy or dry. Temperatures throughout Japan typically vary widely. With a cooler climate in the north and a warmer climate in the south, Japan's wide temperature range is similar to the temperature range across the east coast of the United States. Japan's rainy season is fall. In the rainy season in the fall also brings the threat of typhoons. History. Japanese call their country Nippon, or sun's origin, because they once believed that Japan was the first place on which the sun's rays shone. The country is also called Land of the Rising Sun. The Japanese civilization is thousands of years old and was heavily influenced by its Asian neighbor to the west. This influence can be seen in various ways, including its crops. Some historians think the Japanese gained knowledge of growing rice from the Chinese thousands of years ago. In addition, the religion of Buddhism spread over Korea and Japan in this country. However, Japan has also developed its own unique traditions and customs. Shinto is one of Japan's main religions. Many people observe both Shinto and Buddhist customs. Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples can be found throughout the country. Japan's history is rife with conflict over both land and power. However, the Emperor of Japan has come from the same family. The Yamato dynasty, for more than 2,000 years, it is the oldest continuous monarchy in the world. In the 12th century, a Japanese warrior seized control of the country. It was the first shogun, or military king. For centuries, Japan was ruled by the shoguns. The shoguns continued to allow the imperial family to serve as emperors, even though they had scant power. This time of the shogunates was also time for the shogunate. First warriors who followed a strict code of honor. The samurai was also known as skilled fighters. During their era, Japan operated under a system of feudalism, in which lords owned areas of land, and wielded power over people living on the land. These peasants had to work for the lord in order to live there. In the 19th century, Japan became a democracy in which people elected leaders to the Japanese parliament called the Diet. Japan still has an emperor today, but since the end of World War II, his duties have been ceremonial, not political. Celebrations. In Japan, people celebrate many holidays and festivals throughout the year. Among these holidays are ones that celebrate the rising plants, planting, harvest, and good health for children, and others that honor their ancestors and sisters. One of the most important holidays in Japan is the week-long celebration that leads up to New Year's Day on January 1st. During this week, it's a common Japanese practice to clean the house and pay any debts. People also send good luck cards to each other, and children receive special New Year's toys. On New Year's Day, people often dress in traditional kimonos, eat specially prepared foods, and visit a nearby shrine to pray for good luck for the coming year. Another important celebration is the Lantern Festival called Obon, held since the summer. Obon allows the Japanese to honor their ancestors. During the festival, lanterns or candles are lit and set on rivers and lakes to float slowly away. Food. Rice is an important part of Japanese diet. It is sometimes served in small round cakes called mochi as a snack. Japanese people also really rely heavily on the surrounding ocean for food and incorporate fish and other seafood in many meals. In cities, sushi and sashimi, both made with raw fish, are popular fast food choices. Many Japanese believe that food should look just as good as it tastes. Meals are typically served as several different small dishes, including soups and sometimes noodles. Like their Chinese neighbors, the Japanese usually eat with chopsticks, which are long and utensils made of wood. The Japanese follow many rules when preparing and presenting certain types of food. For example, one traditional ceremony is centered around serving tea and includes a highly organized and elegant process. This tea ceremony is usually held in a small room created just for that purpose. Conclusion. Japan is a small island country covered with mountains, yet it includes crowded, bustling cities and filled with high-tech industries. The land shakes with earthquakes, volcanoes erupt, and typhoons rage, but Japan's people continue to thrive. Over thousands of years, the Japanese have learned to make the most of the lands and waters around them. They grow tons of rice in small areas. They harvest large amounts of fish and seafood from the ocean too. Timeless traditions and customs mingle with cutting-edge technology, making Japan a place that embraces true world, the ancient and modern.